Awesome. Well, welcome to church. If for whatever reason you weren't here last week, you would have missed the very first installment of the series that we are presently in called, love that, Bless This House. So this is Bless This House Part 2, because I believe that God would want to bless our homes, our marriages, our families, our children, our mums and our dads. And so this series is geared for that notion to become a reality in our lives. And so we've been looking at a few things already. In actual fact, unofficially, this series kicked off on Mother's Day when I was joined up here on stage with my wife, and I just asked her questions about being a wife and being a mum and being in ministry. And so that was the unofficial start to the series, but officially it started last week, and this is the second part of the series. This series really is about building and developing Christ-centered homes. And a Christ-centered home is different than a Christian home. A lot of people would say they are Christian today. A lot of people would say as a result they have a Christian home. But there is a difference between a Christian home and a Christ-centered home. A Christian home acknowledges Jesus, but a Christ-centered home obeys Jesus. And we want to make sure that our parenting, we want to make sure that our marriages, we want to make sure that what we do in the home resembles what Jesus modeled to us and what we see in the scriptures. And so last week we looked at hungry hearts for healthy homes. Everything starts with hunger. As a young man in ministry, a man that I looked up to who was our apostolic leader at the time, he said this to me. When developing teams, he said, look for the hunger. You cannot teach or train anyone who's not hungry to be taught or trained. So look for the hunger. Blessed are the hungry, for they shall be filled. You cannot feed someone who's not hungry. And so last week we looked at having a hunger for this particular message, hungry hearts for healthy homes. Today, we're going to shift gears a little, and the title of my message is Happy Spouse, Happy House. I don't like the notion happy wife, happy life. That's too one way. I don't like that. I do believe in happy spouse, happy house. That puts the responsibility on both parties to be there for the other. Not just the husband bending over backwards to please the woman, but the woman blessing the man and the man blessing the woman. The woman loving the man loving the woman. Happy spouse, happy house. And so you don't just get a male husband perspective today. Halfway through the preach, I'm going to tag team with my wife. How does that sound? Because some of you are, oh, that's all right, come up from your. But I saw you, Hannah. I see you. I see you. I see you. I saw the little snarl on your face, that little English snarl. I got an English mother. I know that look. But so we're going to get my beautiful wife to get up here halfway through and hopefully get a nice, well-balanced, and most importantly, biblical insight to marriage. And so we're going to talk about marriage matters. Why? Because marriage matters. We're going to look at some marriage matters. Why? Because marriage matters. Yes, and I know as I say that there are singles here. I see you. I see you. And what I know about most singles is eventually you want to get married. So listen up. The best time to learn is before you get in the battle. You can learn on the job, but it's far better to be equipped before you get married. There's enough you're going to learn on the journey, but if you can set yourself up before the journey, you give yourself a good chance of making the journey not only healthy, but also far more enjoyable. So if you're single today, I see you. There are some that are dating. Woo. In actual fact, all the singles, put your hand up. This is a moment for you. All the singles, put your hand up. Now look around. That's your moment. Anyway. See if there's any little red crosses flashing over a certain person. Who knows? There are some that are dating, and to you, I would say, listen up. What I find with a lot of people when they date, they waste their dating. They waste it with just being in love. I told all of our kids, don't waste your dating. Pick a fight, push the boundaries, find out what's in that person, find out what they really like. Find out who they really are. Don't just get caught up in the love of it all and miss your moment to find out who it is, because what we often find is people just in love and they just waste their dating period, then they get married, then they find out, who is this person? You were meant to find that out on the dating. And so when the young lady says no to the advancement of a young man as he gets a little bit grabby and touchy, you need to know you've got a man who respects your no. And if he won't, or I almost said something I shouldn't say because I'm that passionate about this. I want to protect our young ladies. And if he won't respect your no, he's not the man for you. If he can't wait, he's not the man for you. If he doesn't respect your no, he's not the man for you. We need to set the boundaries, and you do that before you get married, not after. So don't waste your dating. So today, hopefully there's some things here that will help you not waste your dating. I also know there are some here who are divorced. And I do not want to bring any more pain to you. What I know about every person I've ever seen go through divorce is there's a whole stack of pain associated with that. Doesn't matter whose fault it is, there's pain. And I am not here to add to your already pain. So I would say listen up and hear what the Bible has to say when it comes to healthy homes. Because I will say this, if you are divorced, experienced divorce, it's not too late for you. And I also know there are some who are married here. And this is what I know about the married. There are some who are happily married, and there are some who are unhappily married. And there's an array of marriages in between those two extremes. Kath and I have a big job ahead of us today. But I want to be sensitive to your pain, the loneliness of singleness, the pain of your divorce. I want to be sensitive. I also want to celebrate your success. There are some people who are just killing the marriage thing. That is awesome. And you should not feel bad about how well you are doing and how easy you find marriage just because there are others in our midst who are experiencing loneliness and pain. We want to celebrate your journey, but be sensitive to those who are experiencing loneliness and pain. But I also want to be helpful in your journey. So I seek to be sensitive, I want to celebrate, and I want to be helpful today. Why? Because personally, I still believe in marriage. I love being married. Is anyone who loves being married? Please give me a yes. I believe with all of my heart that it is one of the greatest institutions on the planet. Why? Because marriage is His idea, it's His creation, it's His design. And with all good designs and ideas, it comes with a manual on how it all works. I would imagine many of us today came either by automobile or some form of public transport. Would I be right? Do you know 150 years ago, what you came to church on or in did not exist? There was a man a few years ago that had a great idea, and he turned that great idea into a car. And we get the benefit and the privilege of that. The founder of Michael's company and I'm grateful for that man. But with that automobile, there are certain things to do and not to do to that automobile in order to get the best out of it. There's a thing in the car that's called a petrol tank. And that petrol tank is for one thing and one thing only. And you can, in your freedom, put whatever you want in there because you're that free. But can I say, with your freedom, don't be stupid. Because if you put anything but petrol in that car, your car will no longer run as well as it was intended to run. And more than likely, it'll completely stop. You might say, oh, I'm free. I'm not going to put petrol. I'm not going to listen to Mr. Ford. I think I know better. I'm going to put sand in the petrol tank because I can. I'm that free. I don't have to listen to him. I don't have to read this silly manual. And I would say knock yourself out and then buy yourself a new car. Because we all know if you don't follow the manual, you are not going to maximize your experience of a car. And then imagine putting that sand in that car and the car, surprise, surprise, not working. And you come to the conclusion, because it's not working, you no longer believe in cars. You think cars are a silly idea. Sadly, that's how a lot of people view marriage. We have a world full of young people who don't want to get married because they've seen it not work. And they say, what a silly institution, what a silly idea. But marriage wasn't just a good idea, it was a God idea. And as a result, God has a plan for marriage. And he also wrote a manual for marriage. And that manual is the Bible. The Bible is a manual for marriage. In actual fact, the Bible is a manual for life. Whether it's work, managing our finances, managing our husbands or wives or children, it's in his manual called the Word of God, the Bible. The Bible is God's manual for life. And it not only helps us avoid certain things when it comes to our relationships and our marriages, but it even has redemptive solutions for failed marriages. The Bible doesn't shy away from difficult issues, such as divorce and separation and remarriage and all those things. So if you would, turn with me to the Word of God, God's manual, and I want to read from the book of Matthew. Matthew, one of the 12 disciples, who wrote down all the things he saw Jesus do and say. And picking up from chapter 19, verse 1, you can either read on the screen or on your own device or old school Bible. It says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and went into the region of Judea to the other side of the Jordan. Large crowds followed him and he healed them there. Some Pharisees came to test him. They asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Haven't you read, he replied, that in the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and his mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they will no longer be two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. Why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wife because your hearts were hard. But it was not that way in the beginning. I love this question that was asked, albeit a test on Jesus, coming from an impure motive, granted, but it's still a great question, and it's an even better answer that Jesus gives. Why did God allow Moses to issue a certificate of divorce if God hates divorce? Which he does, and we know he does because it's written in his manual. It's written in his word. God hates divorce and yet issues a certificate of divorce. And I believe Jesus wasn't dismissing the pain people experience in broken marriages. He knew that they were just trying to trick him. He knew that the religious people were asking a question just to try and trap Jesus. But even in that moment, Jesus is still thinking of people. And he doesn't want to use their game to hurt people further. Such is the nature and beauty and magnitude of our Savior. What he was doing, he was addressing the deeper issue of what sin does to the human heart. And some people's heart gets so hard or gets so hurt or gets so disillusioned that they can't or won't change. And I believe that God would rather you divorce each other than continue to live together and eventually kill each other. God has a high standard, and it comes with high grace. God is madly and passionately in love with people and has given us a manual to help us avoid some of the pain we experience by doing our own thing, our own way, at our own time. But even when we do that, God is still there redemptively saying there is a way back. And so if you've experienced the pain of divorce, as I said earlier, we're not here to add to the already pain. But I want you to lean into the love and the redemptive nature of our God. Jesus was being set up here, and he's still using his words carefully, using his words kindly, in order not to bring further pain and condemnation that people have experienced those things in their life are already feeling. See, sometimes people carry wounds from things they never chose. Having said all that, that wasn't the only way Jesus answered this. What he did, he then takes them back to the beginning. He said, Moses issued a certificate of divorce because the condition of your heart was not in a place where it was any longer healthy. And if we're not prepared to work at that or can't work at that anymore out of kindness, but he said, but it wasn't like that in the beginning. And Jesus doesn't just go back to the 1950s. Please hear me, ladies. We're not talking about going back to the 1950s. Jesus goes way back to the beginning. To the very beginning. To the blueprint of his creation. He takes them back to God's original intent, the original foundation for marriage. And he says, the two people shall become one. It doesn't say they will become the same. We're not identical. Men and women are far from identical. And that's not a flaw in God's design. That's intentional on his part. And it's our differences, when understood, received, acknowledged, and working together, that makes a difference and becomes a strength when surrendered to Christ. But in order for that to happen, he says, you must leave before you can cleave. One of the biggest hindrances to marriage today is overbearing, interfering in-laws. We may not intend to be that. That may not be our motivation, but it becomes our action because we struggle to let go. When our son got married, he asked me if I would do a little speech, which is unusual because it's usually the bride's father that has the speech. I said, sure. And so I stood up there along with all the other speeches, and I did what most fathers and fathers-in-laws do. And they say, I want to take this time to welcome, her name is Caitlin into our family. Did that thing that you've heard at most weddings. So I thought, I'm going to start with that as my hook. So I said, I would like, note the word like, to take this moment to welcome Caitlin into our family. Then I, and said, but I can't, pregnant pause. Talk about a hook. Everyone went as quiet as you are right now. It went from, hey, eating, drinking, being merry, to that's how I like to get. If I'm going to speak, I don't want to be ignored. And I promise this, every person in that room, every person in this room, I see you at the back, you're looking like, where is he going with this? I said, I can't because he's not joining our family. When your son or daughter marries a young man or woman, they are not joining your family. They are starting their own. I am the captain of my family. I'm not the captain anymore of Mitchie's family. He is. And he has a family of 3 with 1 on the way. And we are delighted. And so I went on to explain what it is. I said the best way I can love them is let them go. Because there comes a time in life where you have to let those ones that you love free. And the beautiful and the most amazing thing is, although they live in New Zealand, I get a phone call from Mitch every Wednesday afternoon. And we talk about love, life, relationships, struggles. We talk about his preach coming up. We talk about song sets he's doing. We talk about the things that he's learning because he's a worship pastor in a very large church in New Zealand. He's learning by the day, which is awesome. He had the privilege and the beautiful, wonderful opportunity to lead worship at a prayer meeting that had 10,000 people in it. See, I want my kids to do better than me. In actual fact, I feel that way about the young people of this church. I want them to preach better than me. I want them to do everything. I want them to do better than me. Our job is to set them up for win. And we don't set them up for win by holding on to them too tight. That's when you're going to smother them, suffocate them. So we need to let them go. I've never led worship in front of 10,000 people before. I've never led worship in front of 10 people before. God did not bless me with a singing voice. And that makes me so happy. I rejoice at what took place here on Friday night as a young lady, Grace, got an opportunity to share the Word of God and to know that I played some small itty-bitty part in helping her frame and set her up for a win. I love that. And I hope she goes on to be a far better communicator and preacher than I ever will. But she never will if we just hold on. But we want to help and lift up and release. So Jesus says, you got to leave before you can cleave. And the second thing is, he highlights that we must complement one another, not compete with one another. We are not in competition with our husband. We're not in competition with our wife. We are different. Let's use the differences to make a difference. Women are amazing. I don't know about you. I love women so much. I married one. I love women. They're incredible. They're intuitive. Women by nature are far more intuitive than men. And so when Kath says, hey, I was feeling, I think, hey, watch this, be careful. I don't see that as nagging. I say, what? I'm blessed because we have a staff member in the name of Wendy. And by her virtue of her name, yes, she's a female. And I get an incredible blessing and privilege to make some great decisions because of her intuition and her strength that she brings as a person who is 100% female. She makes me look better than I am. My wife makes me look better than I am because I get all their wisdom. We're not competing. We're complementing. Don't fight with your wife. Fight for her. Wives, don't fight your husband. Fight for him. Fight for each other, not with each other. God created men and women with difference that are meant to complement one another, not compete with one another. Remember in the beginning of time when God said, look for a suitable helper. And one could not be found. But the whole purpose of him naming the animal kingdom was to look for a suitable helper. And there was not a suitable helper amongst the animal kingdom. We are not animals. We are not part of the animal kingdom. We are uniquely created human beings. And God creates this incredible, amazing, wonderful form of creation called woman. In actual fact, when Adam first saw this creation, he went, whoa, man. That's a 1980s joke. Anyway, I've been around for a long time. Noah gave me that joke. But anyway, I want to say that to say this. Love is not enough. But I love him, but I love her. It's not enough. Are you compatible? Are you equally yoked? And equally yoked doesn't mean they're a Christian. Really? Test it. He's a Christian but doesn't come to church regularly. Is that compatible with your convictions? Don't get married and then complain he doesn't come to church. You knew that before you got married. Don't complain about what you said yes to before you got married. Don't waste your dating. Find out if you're compatible. We've got 2 kids that are married and one that is dating 18 months in. And with all due respect, said to Beej, give him hell. Push every button you can. Find out where he's at. I know he loves you, but are you compatible? And what I'm loving about their journey is the conversations they're getting involved in. Deep conversations, rich conversations that's going to set them up for a win if and when they get married. But you don't want to ask those questions once you're married. It's just too hard. And I'm developing a relationship with this young man who he's phoning me, asking for help, wanting to learn, showing me that he's hungry for this. So let's not waste our dating. In order for marriage to work, we need to leave before we can cleave. We must complement, not compete. Why? Because generally people tend to do marriage one of 3 ways. And the first one is back to back. That's when we've turned away from each other. We live separate lives. There's no real intimacy. There's no deep friendship. They share a house, but they don't share a heart. And they range from strangers to enemies. See, the divorce rate is high, much higher than makes me happy. But what makes me even more unhappy is the fact that that doesn't even factor in those that are still married but not happily married. Those that are living in the same home but there's no heart. They're living as strangers or even enemies. They're staying together for the kids, which is admirable, but there is a better way. So you can do it back to back, and sadly many people do, but there is another way. The other one is shoulder to shoulder, in that they work together on projects. It could be the kids, that becomes a project. It could be the business, that becomes a project. It could be the church, we serve at the same church together, that's a project. And it's all these projects that keep us together. It could just be life responsibilities. The trouble is with shoulder to shoulder alone is the relationship becomes very functional. And the marriage survives on tasks and routine. And the danger is when the project ends, e.g. the kids leave the home, retirement comes, or the business slows down, they realize we don't even know each other anymore. 2 of the most common times people get divorced is either in the first year of marriage or when the kids are out of the house. And when it comes to the kids being out of the house, it's because we've used the kids as the glue for the marriage. And kids for the glue in marriage is not good glue. Love needs to be the glue, not your kids. I do love our kids. But in coming over to Melbourne, we came over without our kids. And I didn't put it on our kids to follow us. I didn't put it on them that they had to join us. The fact that our 2 daughters and son-in-law have joined us since is a bonus, it's a blessing, it's nice. But we didn't need it. My wife and I went on a holiday recently without our family, just me and Kath. And you know what I've learned? I am just so happy with her. I'm just so happy in her company. I love my kids. I don't need my kids. I'm not pining. I wish my kids were here. I mean, that makes a different dynamic, which is always enjoyable. But I don't need them to be happy. I am so happy with me and my wife. The empty nesting experience for us has been incredibly wonderful. Then BJ says, hey, Dad, I really feel in God to move over here. I'm like, really, where are you going to stay? Because you're kind of cramping our style. We love you, but you're cramping our style. back to back, shoulder to shoulder, or face to face. And I believe this is how God designed marriage. This is petrol in the petrol tank stuff. There is intimacy with face to face. There is conversation with face to face. And get this, there's friendship with face to face. You know what? Even with face to face, yes, you still have to do shoulder to shoulder. There's still kids to raise. You can't just be in love with each other. Oh, and the kids are just like, there is some shoulder to shoulder when it's face to face. But it's face to face that's the glue. Face to face must be the glue. In other words, we're friends. Kath and I are friends. Yes, we're lovers, but we're friends. We met at roller skating as 14-year-olds, and we just developed a long-term friendship. And I just married my best friend. That's not a cliche for me. I mean, I married my best friend. For me, that is not a cliche. And I believe that's the way God intended marriage to be. Song of Solomon says something really interesting. And if you read Song of Solomon, it's a really spicy, sexy, steamy love letter. It's a letter between two lovers. So men, if you want some ideas, or ladies, read Song of Solomon tonight and surprise your wife, surprise your husband. Anyway. But as spicy and as steamy, talks about pomegranates. Everything in there is a metaphor for other body parts. But anyway, I've got your attention again, haven't I? Look at you. But as spicy and as steamy as Song of Solomon's is, Song of Solomon chapter 5 verse 16 says this: "This is my beloved, this is my friend." All that steamy stuff, foundation, friendship. Happy marriages are based on deep friendship, not just romance, attraction, six packs, body types or shapes, length of hair, facial structure. It's not enough. You need genuine friendship. Friendship is what keeps a marriage alive. What could that look like, man? A lot of things. For us, it's regularly dating one another. I would say this to every young man: whatever you do to get the girl is what you've got to do to keep the girl. So if you had a shower and got yourself ready and dressed up and made sure you smelt nice for her as a teenager to get her eye, to keep her eye, when you're in your 50s and 60s, keep having a shower, keep putting on cologne, keep doing it. Otherwise, she's going to feel trapped. You did that just to get me. Now you got me. You just treat me like a smelly old man. And so it goes both ways. Ladies, you took hours to get ready. Let's be honest. You took hours. The hair, the makeup. Some people say, "Oh, what do you think about makeup?" This is my thought on makeup. This is my personal thought about makeup. Should women wear makeup? I think some women really should wear makeup. That's all I'm saying. Kath and I get up every morning early and we go for a walk. And we have our walkie-talkie. And we walk and we pray, we talk, we dream, we laugh. Which is a big part of our experience. We laugh. We have inside jokes that we've been telling each other for decades. It means nothing to you. But every time she says something or I say something, it takes us back and we just smile. If I told you some of those things, like, I don't get it. You don't have to. It's not your thing. It's our thing. But it makes me smile. We see some things. It could be a movie. It could be a line. It just means something to us, and it brings a smile to our face. Is this helpful this morning? Well, it's only going to go now to a whole nother level of help as I introduce my wife. Come on. Let's put our hands together for Kath as she comes. My beloved and friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Great. I was enjoying that backstage. Thanks, babes. Awesome. If you know Tony and myself, we really want to be helpful and to equip people. And so we just were chatting and thinking, actually, from here, what I would like to do is just share 4 things that we do, and I believe if you could do, it would just help to keep that face-to-face friendship and working on it. And I've done it in such a way that they're hopefully easy, catchy phrases so that you can just write them down, you can commit them to memory, and in the journey, not just today after the service, not just this next week, but constantly pull them out, and you can do an assessment on yourself and on your marriage and how are we going, because we're all human and we can have the best intentions, but life does get in the way sometimes, and you just find yourself drift. And it's not to be negative, it's just to, okay, wait a minute, I've just let that slip. Let's get back into that. So I just want to share those 4 things with you. And the first one is this. How do we stay face to face? Well, you've got to talk honestly. We've got to move beyond surface conversation. And Tony mentioned that earlier and about that side to side. Yes, I know we've got jobs to do. I know there's kids' schedules, but it's so easy to turn into an event manager as a mum and as a wife, that you're just planning everything, like you're making the birthday parties are coming, the kids are getting to school, there's the excursions, there's things we need to talk about. Okay, how do we manage the cars? There's schedules to fit in. There's this is happening here, this is happening here. And soon, all of our conversations just become about doing things, and there's nothing intimate or about those. And we've got to stop sharing just facts and opinions and start sharing feelings, fears, dreams, struggles. Because what I've learned and what we've learned is you cannot build intimacy just on logistics. And that means that we've just got to do the hard work and talk about real things. When's the last time that you have sat with your spouse and just said, what's your dream? What's our dream? How are we going with the dream we said 2 years ago? What is it new? Has it changed? What's your fears? Hey, I've noticed with this coming up, what's going on the inside? Is there anything that I haven't picked up, any nuance I haven't been aware of? Or what about this one? I noticed that work's been tough. I noticed that the season has changed a little bit. Is there anything I could do to help you in that? Or is there anything that I'm doing that's potentially adding extra pressure or extra strain, either in our parenting, in my wifing of you? How am I doing? In fact, we do this all the time, and even just this Friday night, we had the opportunity that now that Bailey is back in our home, Friday night's date night because she goes to youth. So parents, make sure your kids go to youth, because then you can have date night. And so we went out date night, just found a nice little pub, sat there, and just were chatting. And so I said to Tony, hey, babes, in light of what the week has been, I know that there's been a couple of things you've had to carry, a couple of things that you've been doing. Is there anything that I'm perhaps not doing that you would like the opportunity to speak to me about? And the reason we do that is because, I don't know about you, but when you have to approach someone about something that they're doing that's either bothering you or annoying you, you're already on the back foot. Because you're the recipient, or you're the person who's experiencing that. And so to have to go up to someone and say, look, we need to have a conversation because what you're doing is this, how much nicer and easier is it that if you, as the other person, could just put yourself out there and say, hey, is there anything I'm doing that is actually aggravating you, annoying you? Do this. And then you hold your breath. Because hopefully then they're able to respect, like, thank you so much for asking. And I've always found that when I ask, the actual response is way kinder, way nicer, way I receive it more, because I've positioned myself to be able to receive it. And so just this Friday night, just sat there and said, hey, in light of this, what is it that I could do to help you? And what am I doing that is not helping you? And then, okay, let's talk about that. And I just have to say, ladies, I know it's not rocket science, but a man don't know what a man don't know. And so we sometimes sit there and go, oh, he should know this and he should know this. And I'm just like, he don't. So you know what? God created you with a mouth. And so we have to learn to say, actually, I need to speak up. And it can go both ways. It can go both ways, you know what? And when I say that, I also say you do have a responsibility, girls, that you have to actually answer or tell them. Because often, how many times someone asks and you go, I'm okay. It's like, you're not. That's a lie. You've got to get to the point where you can say, actually, and I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that it is worth it. And if we want to fight for face-to-face, we've got to get over ourselves and we've got to put ourselves in a position where we can ask and then we can receive and then we can move forward. I want to say too, on that point, to also give each other grace. Because I realise there's all different people in the room, different personalities. For some people, it's just so easy to speak up. And for some of us, it's actually really hard. And I think if you both go into it knowing it's gracious, it might, if you've never done it, let me give you a hint. It's going to be awkward. You're going to feel weird and strange. I'm saying keep going. What have you ever done for the first time and you just nailed it and thought, yeah, I just nailed that, I got it great. No, it's going to feel weird. But if you give each other grace, realize they are stepping into something new for them. So don't roll your eyes when they say something. Don't snigger. Don't laugh. No matter how silly it may feel or appeal to you, you need to meet them when they step out and say, well, I really appreciate you being able to do that. So give each other grace. Extend grace to one another. Encourage one another when you do it. So that just, hey, great. And I also need to just a caveat. Talking honestly isn't rude or harsh or brash. Oh, I'm just being honest. No, you're actually being a jerk. So you can bring something up, but it's the way in which you do it. So please don't just say, no, Kath said be honest, and I'm telling you, girlfriend, your cooking sucks. So no, I didn't say that. There could be something you could suggest, or there's a better way to do it. So please don't use that as a way to say, no, she said be honest. And also on communication, when we're talking honestly, please don't talk through a third party. I see people do it all the time. It's like kids come to mum and say something and they say, oh, well, if your father, in other words, what you're saying to your child is you've got an issue with dad, but you haven't told dad. And if you let it leak into the kid, then the kid goes off to dad. And we can do that through girlfriends about our partners. We can do that through work colleagues. That's a relational thing for anyone. Do not talk to somebody through someone else. Just have the courage to say, hey, we need to have a conversation. It might not be pleasant. So do what you can to make the scenario and the situation pleasant. Take them out for a coffee. Get the kids babysat if there's some things you need to talk about, but prioritize talking, but talking honestly. Staying face to face requires us to talk honestly. The other thing you need to do is you need to walk humbly. I've discovered that pride keeps couples distance. Selfishness kills intimacy. Ruth Graham, I love this quote. She says, a happy marriage is the union of two good forgivers. We just have to walk with humility. Great marriages are filled with quick repentance. You've got to learn to say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Help me understand. Because when you have that posture of humility, it's like when I said, when you ask the question, you're already putting yourself in the position of, I'm prepared to hear what it is you have to say. And we have a rule in our relationship is you can say anything. So after you say, I feel. So I can say, I feel like, I can say anything. Tony, we've discovered it's the rule that we have that he won't judge me, I won't judge him. As I say, I feel, and anything goes. But here's the caveat. You cannot say because you feel it is true. You have to say, I feel, and you have to have a heart posture that says, but I'm going to walk humbly because what I feel may not actually be correct. It's what I feel. And always we'll get to that point where we can talk to one another and say, I understand now, based on you saying that, why you feel that way, but let's talk into why you feel that way. Because just because you feel that way, Kath, doesn't mean it's true. Just because you feel this doesn't mean, because our feelings are indicators of something going on. Your feeling, so Tony will often say to me, thank you for being honest. Thank you for sharing how you feel. Now, let's do a dive into what is the motivation of that feeling. and you can get through, and it could come out to actually the point that I brought up to you was correct. And, oh, babes, I'm sorry that, Tony will say, I'm sorry, I didn't realise I was making you feel that way. We've got to resolution. Or it could be, you know what, you feel that way, but let's look it back, let's pare it back, and actually that feeling is connected to something else that has nothing to do with how I've interpreted it. Because I've just discovered that feelings are amazing, but they make wonderful masters. They make bad masters, but they're wonderful servants. So let's not be mastered by our feelings and have the rule, I feel, but just be open that, hey, I might not be feeling correctly. All right. The other thing when we talk about walking humbly is Tony and I don't walk alone. We have trusted and invited friends that we would bring into our relationship. And another one of my favourite sayings is that we are friendly with all, but vulnerable with a few. And what I mean by that is, you know what, I love everybody, I'm going to be friends with everyone, but there are only certain people that I bring into the intimate space of mine and Tony's marriage for them to correct, to talk, to speak, to notice. And that's what humility does, because I realise I've got blind spots. Tony's got blind spots. And sometimes if we can't get agreement of that, who's the trusted person in our relationship that we can go to and say, will you help us with this? And I remember very early on in our marriage and ministry days, we had visiting speakers always used to come, and we had the privilege they could stay in our home, and you get to do life with them. And some lovely preaching friend of ours, lady, took me out for coffee, and we had coffee. I thought I was a setup. I thought I was just having coffee. And she just sat me down and just said, hey, chatting, asking me how I was going and what I was doing. And she said, hey, I just want to bring something to your attention. And she said, I just noticed when Tony brings a correction to you, just something that he maybe thinks is not right. And she'd just seen the unguarded moments. She said, I just see a countenance drop and a aspect of where you're not hearing what he's saying, you're personalizing it and making it a character issue. And I was like, oh, well, that's not easy to hear. But I looked this woman in the eye and I thought, she's gone the many distance in ministry. She has lots of experience. She's a trusted friend. If she's seeing something, then I need to listen. And I think we need to have people in our world. It's not everyone, because everyone's got opinions. It's like, no, who is a friend of your marriage that can speak into it to help you? And so my propensity to personalise things was brought to my attention way back then. And it's just been something that I constantly work on. And it was because a woman was brave enough and loved me enough and loved our marriage enough that she spoke up into that graciously, kindly, not on the rebound, but had thought about it and spoke into that for me. And I then had to do the humble thing, and I could reject it. I could say, well, who do you think you are? You're staying in my home, blah, blah. Or I could go, here's a woman that God has placed in my life because he loves me and he wants the best for me and he wants the best for my marriage. So walk humbly. Staying face to face requires us walking humbly. Number 3 is to plan intentionally. Face-to-face marriage requires prioritizing time together. You know what? You will never have enough time. You've got to make time. It has to be a priority. And it doesn't have to be some big, amazing thing. I think often we're like, no, until I've got enough time in my diary where we can have a half day or a date, or I'm saying a coffee, something that says intentional, something that says, no, this is set aside for you and I to connect and have face. It can be over a coffee. You heard Tony say we do our walkie-talkie every morning. We get up early. We go for a walk, 6K walk along the Yarra, and it's everything. Because we do it daily, we have the luxury of talking about everything. We can talk about logistics. We can talk about hopes and dreams. We can pray. But that's because we do it daily. If this is a one-off thing for you, I'm going to say to you, no, don't talk kids. Don't talk what has to be done. Talk you. How are we doing? This is our time. This is what I've set aside for you and I to discuss anything we want to discuss regarding you and me. So again, like I said, it doesn't have to be major, but it has to be some time. Dinner, even times at dinner. We've always had a rule when the kids were home, and we still do it to this day. We eat dinner at the table. We don't eat dinner in front of the television. We don't eat. And even when our kids all had part-time jobs and they were around, I would hazard a guess, probably 5 nights out of 7, we could eat dinner together. We worked everything because we made time. It was a priority. And even to now, Tony and I, the two of us, sit down, we have dinner together, the television's off, there's no devices on the table, there's no other external interference, and we eat together. And that is about prioritising time, that while we're eating, because often when you're relaxed and you're eating, you're doing things, stuff can come out and you can just be talking about things. So part of that feeling awkward and, how do I bring up a conversation? It can just happen naturally and organically. But what didn't happen naturally or organically was the prioritising of it. Sitting in a park, going to the beach, whatever it is you like to do, find something the two of you can do together and enjoy one another's company and engage. It's that always be thinking face to face, and it doesn't mean you're sitting there staring at each other like this, but it's that we are engaging, not just getting off and doing something. So date nights, schedule them in. And I think I said it on Mother's Day. Hey, I know that there's different opportunities, finances, time, whatever. It's something. It doesn't have to be major. It just has to count. And because what I've discovered too is often when seasons change, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. You can spend a smaller amount of time, but it's quality that counts, and because there is such a thing, and we termed it the ministry of presence. Everybody wants the ministry of the Holy Spirit, which we all agree, we want God. But you know what? There's a ministry of presence that we bring to each other. And you can be in the same room with someone and not connect. And so, again, it's about the quality of doing it. So we have rules with technology, and I think Tony mentioned them earlier. Technology doesn't belong in our bedroom. There's no phones in the bedroom. And even when our kids, I'm jumping ahead because next week I think we do parenting, but even with our kids, and they always, here's a guide, because they'll go, I need the phone for my alarm. I went to Big W when my kids were little, and I bought them one of those old-fashioned alarm clocks. All of them had an alarm clock. And I was like, no, you don't need a phone in your bedroom. Here's an alarm clock. And I know it works because every morning I would hear Mitchie's going, bah, 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 and I'd have to get up and go and turn it off. So get out of bed. So again, no, we don't have technology in our bedroom. We don't have technology on the couch. You know what I've noticed? And I started to see it creeping with us, and I was like, no, that's it. We've got a rule, put the phone up on the bench. But you'd be sitting on the couch with, let's movie time, let's go watch a movie. But you've got your phone, and then it texts, and then it rings, and then it's so easy. And we're like, no, if we're doing one thing, let's do one. It's the ministry of presence. And so we bought a box. All the phones go there. They do not get touched, not allowed, not at the TV, anything. You need to be present. It's the biggest thing that you see when you're talking with husbands and wives. It's like, yeah, we're together, but we're not there. It's like the ministry of presence. Sit, cuddle, hold hands, make whatever it is for you in terms of feeling like we are connecting. Give them your attention, eye contact, things like that. And just a helpful tip, you do have to just schedule it. When we were younger, I used to just, and at work and ministry, it's a lot easier now, it's the two of us, but I'd make appointments with Tony. So his secretary would go, what's this? I'm like, it's me and Tony time. I just put it in his diary. So schedule it. It won't just happen if you don't do that. And you can change it because things happen. You can move it, but you cannot cancel it. So because it's so easy to just go, look, I'll just cancel that because I'll fit something else in. And so we, again, have a rule. No, it can move because life happens. It can't cancel. And then lastly, work playfully. Marriage is work, but it shouldn't feel like work. That's why we need to keep it playful. The moment work feels like work, it becomes hard work. And so children laugh an average of 300 or more times a day. Adults laugh an average of 5 times a day. So as adults, we've got a lot of catching up to do. And I think it's because as we get older, we become more aware of things, we become more risk averse, and we just have to fight to keep the playfulness. Life gets serious very quickly. Bills, kids, responsibilities, and pressure. And Tony and I have just been very, very intentional about keeping the fun, keeping the flirt, keeping all those things happening so that we can do face-to-face. And many of you would have heard about our 2016 where Tony was really sick, fighting for his life, lots of different situations and circumstances. And what I love about my husband is he has a saying, says, if it can be funny today, one day, it can be funny today. And we've got story after story of in hospital of just different things that, you know, in a sense that was like horrific, but we just tried to find the funny side. And I remember the night before Tony went in to surgery, we were down in the sort of emergency section. They'd taken him down for another CT or MRI, I can't remember. And we were waiting. And they were going to do spinal surgery the next day. And so we were waiting there, and it was getting close to midnight, and we were tired. And I just looked up, and the man in the next bed, unfortunately for him, had an unfortunate side profile. And I don't know if you remember the Count from Sesame Street. The Count. Like, so he had this. And I just looked over, and I just said to Tony, 1, ha, 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 ha. And then we just got the giggles and just stupid stuff. But just, you know what? There's the guy that I was saying goodbye because we didn't know if I would see him again. He was having surgery and they weren't great odds. And so you think you could be serious and do whatever. But I mean, no, keep it playful. Send the flirty text, especially when he's in a business meeting. All right. Different things like that. Just let him know that you think it's things that they don't expect, but it just keeps it playful. My last story is this one. It's often Tony, when he travels, he gets all his clothes out on the bed and I pack it in the suitcase because I just deal with that. So sometimes I pack little surprises. I just put little things in, little mementos of me, so that when he gets there and he opens his suitcase, he's like, don't open that in front of someone. Just little things like that that lets your spouse know you're thinking of them, that they're important, that it's fun for no other reason than it does something for him. And he would also say that what I have to tell you, and it's something I've had to work hard on, ladies, is public displays of affection. You wouldn't believe it, but I'm actually pretty conservative and stoic, and I didn't marry a conservative and stoic man. And I have had to work hard on how I struggled to hold hands in public, let alone give him a kiss or a cuddle. And I've had to work really hard on that, but that's because I know that's what he likes. That's what has been good for our marriage. And the best thing is that it's shown my family, my kids, and those who know us that marriage is fun, marriage is work, but it's amazing, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Marriage is a gift. It's not something to survive, but something to enjoy. Staying face to face requires us to continue to work playfully.